Exodus 33, God's Message by Kenneth Yim. In summary, Exodus 33 is the story of Moses and his people. At the time, Moses had just brought his people out of Egypt, and so they're in wandering. However, the Lord tells Moses to take his people out of wandering into the promised land. Also at the same time, Moses sets up a tent of meeting in which people who have questions that they want to ask directly to God go through Moses first. At this time, Moses also speaks with God, and Moses asks God to promise him that the Lord will be with them wherever they go. And this is very significant because at the beginning of the chapter, the Lord said that He will not be with them at first, but change His mind later, because the Lord saw the Israelites as stiff-necked and stubborn, in which He also says that He will destroy them along the way, if He does guide them. Some repetition in Exodus 33. The word Lord is used 12 times. Moses used 14 times, and the phrase I will 14 times. The phrase I will is very powerful because the phrase I will was spoken by God. And when God says that He will do something, it most definitely means that He will do it. Some questions I have about Exodus 33. What form does God use when He speaks to Moses, or just to people in general? No one is actually sure, yet from what I've read in other chapters of the Bible, and other parts of it as well, whenever God does happen to appear before a man and speak to him, He always appears in some form of blinding light. Therefore, I believe that when God descends to earth and speaks with Moses, that He comes down in some form of shining light. Because also in Exodus 33:23, it says that no one will ever see His face. Also, what does God's voice sound like? I always thought that God's voice would be a deep, manly voice because that's how it's always portrayed in movies. However, this may not be true. Yet I believe that it is the most fitting answer for now, because no one actually knows what God's voice was like. Just some comments. God actually talked with Moses, which is actually uncommon because at the time people believed that God only talked to religious authorities and not just people in general, like Moses was. Also, God works hand in hand with His people, and that's very significant because this concept of working hand in hand with His people will pop up later on throughout the Bible and throughout the book of Exodus as well. Also, some notes. In Exodus 33:5 notes from the Net Bible, it says that God might destroy the Israelites. And I believe that this will happen because the Israelites throughout history have gone through a process of redemption and punishment. A process that will be continued throughout history. And therefore, when God says that He will punish His people, or destroy His people, I believe that it is a foreshadowing of what God will do in the future. And again, God will move with Moses, and this shows that God wants to be personal with His people. What does Exodus 33 show us about God? Well, it shows us that God is always with us, that He wants to guide us on the right path. Because although at first Moses and his people were wandering and they were lost, when Moses called out to God for help, God responded and said that He will bless them with His presence on their journey. Also, what does Exodus 33 show us about people? Well, as God said, He wanted to destroy us, which obviously means that people aren't actually as good as we think we are, but that only by God's mercy is how we're saved from death and from a terrible fate. Therefore, all in all, I believe that Exodus 33 should be like a lesson to us, and that lesson should be that even though we are lost, and even though that we may not be pleasing to God, that God will still come down and help us whenever we need it. Thank you for listening.